In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Notice that in that first passage in the book of Genesis, it says, God, in the beginning, time, God made the heavens, space, and the earth, matter, as you'd see. So we have time, space, and matter. Three things that had to come into existence at some point. This is interesting. I'm a physicist, medical physicist by training, but my bachelor's was in chemistry, and then I have done a lot of work in math history, writing math curriculum. And one thing you'll find fascinating is that the people behind a lot of the theories we teach in physics today had no problem believing that God made the world, and they studied the world that God had made. Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, Galileo Galilei, Leonid Euler, Carl Friedrich Gauss. I could go on and on and on, right? But something changed in the 1800s. Around the 1850s to 70s, right? There were a few things that happened. You can look at some of the writers of the time, right? You have people like Karl Marx. You have Charles Darwin doing his work. 1859, The Origin of Species came out. But around this time, James Clerk Maxwell was also alive. James Clerk Maxwell, I would argue, is probably the last of the greatest mathematical physicists of all time. I mean, he's probably the greatest mathematical physicist, right? So Maxwell is the one who showed us that light was electromagnetic radiation. He showed us the rings of Saturn and what they were made of. Fascinating man. I'm going to be talking more about his book later on. Actually, I have one of his books, one of the stories of his life here, called Faraday, Maxwell, and the Electromagnetic Field. Faraday is also very fascinating. But I bring him up because he died in 1879, the year that Albert Einstein was born. And it seems like something changed in science around that time. Well, part of what happened was the Franco-Prussian War had happened earlier on in 1870-71. So we had the Franco-Prussian War, and there was a change in Europe now where where Germany was now the dominating force. Otto von Bismarck, you might know that name. The city of Bismarck, North Dakota is named after him. But one of the interesting things is that Germany won the war against France, right? And look at the theological framework of Germany in the 1850s to the 1920s. What is the theological framework? So notice that the theological framework of a nation can affect how things happen in the research that is being done. So I would argue that something changed in the late 1800s that has affected some of the dynamic when it comes to the discussions of what science is or how science should act. When we look at Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When we look at science from that lens, I believe that they can be much more flourishing with respect to the fact that we understand the universe is intelligible. We have that premise established, and we're building from there. We're not asking ourselves, why do these laws work? It's odd that they do if there's no designer. But there is a designer, there is a creator. And that's the story of the Christian faith. But I'm not going to stop there because there's even a more important aspect to this story. And that is the fact that God not only made the world, but he then sent his only begotten son into the world. And the Bible says in John 3:16 that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. That is the message of the Christian faith, that God created the world, but then God also came into the world and he lived a perfect life and he took upon himself the sins of the world and he died on the cross so that you and I can have new life in him. In an era of technological advancement and all these tools that can make our lives more efficient, people are probably going to start asking themselves, what is the meaning of life? And the meaning of life can only be found when we turn our lives back to the one who gave us life. It is in him that we move and have our being, as the Apostle Paul says in the book of Acts 17. So where do we go from here? Let's read our Bibles. Let's read the Bible. Let's go back to the source that can explain why the universe makes sense at all. My name is Amos Tarfa. Feel free to subscribe to this channel, Living Sensibly with Amos Tarfa. I'm going to be guiding us through different topics in apologetics. We're looking at Dr. Robert Mark's book about AI and how we should interact with it and just knowing the limits of it. So I want to encourage parents and especially young people to turn to God to be their source. Take care and have a blessed day.